without being, um, stupid, about it. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the trip at the moment is really trying to find purpose in life. And we had that discussion about existentialism and the idea that, there is no meaning and you make your own meaning. And then, I don't know. I guess
I don't
my,
actually believe that.
yeah,
I don't believe that at all. Actually, I believe that what I think now is that human beings are intrinsically meaningful characters. That's why they live in culture.
okay, so
And
anything they do by its very nature becomes meaningful. Is that,
yeah, and even by making it meaningless, it's still a type of meaning,
yes.
right? And
It's the
so,
bubbles and nothing that make it something.
yes, exactly. The great mysteries, after all, are in the average, everyday things occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look, everyone has to come to their own realization and their own understanding in their own time,
Mm.
and they also have to be aware of what they're asking for as well. Because I found in a lot of the mystical stuff, people are asking for everything and anything, and you know, yeah,
I guess it comes back to that sort of idea: know thyself is the core, right? I mean,
yep,
otherwise you
basically.
don't know what to ask for as well. Just, yeah,
But how do you know yourself?
just feet in lowest hell, head in the highest heaven. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like experimentation. I mean, when
Doesn't
you,
it?
yeah, it sounds very much like experimentation. We can do another corny quote, method of science, aim of religion. Um,
Oh, that's spawned such huge movements now
yeah,
that are non-telemic as well.
yes,
No, it's interesting because it was a non-thelemic idea in the first place, but it went through a thelemic lens, and
yeah.
not much was being said on anything. And now it's everyone's saying religion, method of science, is even creeping into the new age.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, which is like that's a sign for big bucks. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so I guess the personal trip at the moment is just, hey, 40's coming around the corner, looking back at life going, well, uh, as a young man, I was interested in computers and consciousness and trying to use those sort of mediums to, I don't know, achieve again that sense of know thyself. It seemed like there was nothing, nothing better to do at the time, and then sort of getting lost into a I wouldn't say the rat race, but just the mundane, I guess, which is, look, in and of itself has its own beauties and charms, but just coming out and saying, well, I don't know, 40, I'm sure it'd blink my eyes and we'll be 60 or 80, and in one way that seems like a long time, in another way it's barely even a flicker, and you know yeah, I'll edit all this out, I guess.
No, but what I think is really interesting is that when I was younger, um, you know, if anyone asked me what did I think I was going to do in the future, I would
Mm.
have said I don't know. I
Yeah.
would have presumed that life would have taken me there, because I was
So
brought
you're
up,
very much a
educated.
reed in the wind, basically.
Yeah, no, not at all. I just that I was educated, and I was obviously within the context of being in Melbourne with all the groovy
Oh,
people
I see.
and all that stuff like that. And jobs always come up because you're
Yes.
with people, and people need certain skills and stuff like that. And you can do things, and I can talk well and all that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
I just sort of thought I would have naturally gone with those sort of things. And what made me not go with those sort of things was my mystical side, not
Yes.
because I was interested in mystical practices, but because everyone was rampantly atheist.
No, I
And I
see.
stupidly told them that I enjoyed the mystical side of life, which
Yes.
was a real character
Not
assassinating
very,
thing to
yeah,
do,
yeah.
right? So
Not
therefore,
very cool, yeah.
the group that I grew up with ended up just either becoming junkies or yuppies, and so I had to go and find another group of people or stuff like that, and then so I guess it was just really naive of me, I think, when I think about it, to think like that.
Yeah.
And yet I meet people these days who are very concerned about where they're going to be, and they plan themselves. And to me,
Yes, yes, yes.
that's the antithesis of the freedom that I had,
Yeah.
which was badly played. However, it was a great freedom that could have been well played.
Yes.
So it seems a great shame to go from one extreme of to have all this freedom
Yeah.
and play it incompetently
Yeah.
to having no freedom and playing it very banally. Like,
Yeah.
like no one's going to be that great anymore, because history is, if you believe the common word. It's over. You know, like I mean,
Who the hell says history's over? I mean,
I've just met lots of people who have this really idea that everything's been done before, everything's been said before. You know, everything's just a repackaging of something else, and it's like, well,
really?
yeah, I get a lot of that sort of type of stuff. That you know, I'm going to be Marilyn Monroe. Not I'm going to be someone as interesting as Marilyn Monroe,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm going to be Marilyn Monroe. You know?
Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, well, you know, yeah, and then the incessant cut-up technique and culture where you put two things together and think you've created something really interesting. I don't know. Marilyn Manson to me was so unbelievably stupid.
Okay.
Boring, actually.
But at least
Corny.
he experimented. At least he tried something
Well,
different.
no, this is the thing. It was for
Yeah.
his journey. It was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
for him, it was.
And it spoke to quite a number of people.
It spoke
yeah.
to a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, and it was really surprising that in the Church of Satan they loved him.
Oh, wow. Is it right? Really?
Well, I mean, it's funny because I guess he was their version of a poster boy, but
yeah, exactly.
yeah, but you know, that group of people tends to be very much. Everyone's got a shaven head and a beard and says, "I do not suffer fools gladly." Beep 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 like
Yeah.
robots. I mean, you do have exceptions.
Was it Anton LaVey who we watched that documentary
Yeah,
on?
he was wonderfully
Oh, he was
interesting,
brilliant.
eccentric, and
Yeah, yeah.
amusing, and
Pet tigers and
Yeah.
mannequins and organs.
and
sort of-
so
it was brilliant.
individual and so unique.
Yes,
and
yes.
now he's
A love of circus music. It was fantastic.
he made it all up apparently.
Who cares? It was brilliant.
Oh, it was a great show. Yeah, exactly. Who really cares? But I guess what I'm saying is that a lot of people don't want to find themselves. They want to ride on the coattails of someone else that they regard as heroic or great, and as a result of which they're competing with 20 million people, and their chances of success are very slight.
Right.
Because it's over mined, it's over colonised, and it's that whole sort of sense of being the individual that follows their dreams. That is, they're the people like the Steve. Everyone wants to be Steve Jobs now, but who wanted to be Steve Jobs when he was nobody?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And that's the whole thing. No one wants that
We're
out in
all
the wilderness.
individuals. I'm not.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
no one wants to be out in the wilderness anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's an interesting thing. So you're saying that, copying. Obviously, a lot of people want to copy because it's a path that's been trodden. It's not, in some ways you're not taking a huge amount of risk. You know what I mean?
Well, it looks like you're not, but you are, because there's too many people to compete with.
Well, that's right. So yeah, the land. I mean, maybe if you get in early enough, there might be something interesting to.
Well, that's the whole mentality. It's a gold rush mentality, and
right.
gold rush mentalities leave nothing for the future.
But I guess the thing about gold rush.
Look at Victoria.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess the thing which is interesting, of course, is when we talk about a physical gold rush. Gold exists in certain parts of the world. I mean, I don't know, unless my mind can make gold manifest. But with ideas, I guess anything's possible, isn't it? I mean, to be the individual. So why is it so scary to be an individual?
Because you're alone.
Mm.
You're alone, and you've got no support. You need a lot of strength for that.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess my experience of seeing people
And of course, if you
attempt
believe
that
yourself,
path is
now you're actually mentally ill. You're psychotic, or you've got some behavioural problem. Like Dickens is a great example. He used to apparently write for 3 or 4 days, and then sleep for three or 4 days.
Yeah.
As it turns out, previous to the Industrial Revolution, people didn't work 9 to 5.
No.
And they didn't even work.
Winter was a time of hibernation, and summer you
and
worked.
people would not sleep in long blocks as well. It just depended where you were as to what you did. But he's would be regarded as manic depressive now. Now, without his literature, we wouldn't have had a more reflective society in our, because he talks a lot about the injustices and the hypocrisy of the age, etc., which makes people think twice about and exposes a lot of the tricks of the age. The shoddy car salesman type tricks of the age. And so, there are all these people that actually built our civilization that are now regarded as just nuts. And that's just that's a very bad disconnection to your heroes. You know,
Yeah.
like Jesus Christ is a schizophrenic, I believe. If you believe, certain ways of looking at him, because he hears voices,
Well, I
which
mean,
everyone does, by the way, all across the planet.
yeah.
Turns out, it's how you live with them that makes a difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing about the individual path is that it can be quite brutal. And I think it's hard once you've got family and responsibilities to sort of say, right, I'm going to go on this individual path, which can lead to some fairly, yeah,
Well, it's going to be brutal anyway.
Yeah.
And it's guess which brutality you're prepared to pay for.
yeah,
But yeah, it's going to be brutal. I mean, no, I mean there's lights of hope around to
Yeah.
orientate you towards certain things that might end up just being, smoke and mirrors. But then that smoke and mirrors is reflecting some real hope in the long run. In any case. Yeah, but
And
we
I
don't.
guess it's contextual too, in the sense that, I might look at someone and think, gosh, they're going through a horrific period, but then in their own minds it might not be that bad, or it might be utopic. I don't know. Who am I to judge?
Yeah, well, some people like different things to me, and yes, I've noticed. I mean, there's things that I look at what they're doing, going, oh my God, that is just the most depraved thing I've ever seen in my life. And to them, it's utterly the way things are.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you don't really want my interaction, I gather,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, sometimes I've met people in situations in life. I think, well, this can be remedied if we do this, and this, and there's no will to it because that's the way they think things are.
Yeah. So we talk about will,
Mm.
and obviously there's a concept of true will. What to you is will?
There's one I find really interesting is after coming from an attempt at organised Thelema lens, what a ridiculous attempt the whole Commission will that was, because you're going to have will anyway.
Yes.
And the greatest.
Otherwise, you just sit down and start.
Yeah, and it's a great marketing tool because if you leave, you're showing you have your true will, and if you stay, you're showing you have your true will. So they're always right.
Yeah.
Right, and one of the worst things you can do is you can say to them, it's a waste of time because of course nothing's a waste of time because you're following your true will.
Yeah.
And this is great, and everyone's.
So what you're saying is, you could look at it in the lens saying finding your true will. Well, whatever you're doing right now is your true will anyway. So by
Well,
its
how do
very
you know what
nature-
your true will is until you found it?
Well,
How do you
Yeah.
know what your true will is until? How do you know that person's found their true will if you haven't found yours?
Yeah.
So it's a funny sort of idea because the idea is to find. It comes from an earlier idea. One of them is that one group of there's one theme in Christianity where you have Jesus Christ died on the cross for your sins, or anyway, they actually come up with a few different equations, but that's one of them.
Yeah.
Means that you're saved.
Yes.
Therefore, if you're saved, you are loved by God.
Yes.
Therefore, be yourself.
Yes.
And that sort of comes out as
Feel
being
confident to
yeah,
do.
yeah, and that comes out as being your true will in later forms because you're following the fact that you're doing what you're meant to be doing, what you really are, which is your true will, which is being loved by God or whatever. And it comes out, it can be. It comes in many. It's not in one school of one sector Christianity. It's in a few different sects and a few different configurations. But it's just this. It's an idea that I mean, Jews are chosen people. It's the same sort of idea. God has chosen you, therefore you should feel loved.
Okay.
Therefore,
another interpretation. Yeah.
Yeah, and therefore you should be who you are because
Yeah.
God has chosen you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because God likes you.
Yeah,
For being you.
Yeah,
Otherwise, he
yeah,
would have
yeah.
chosen you.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet you might say that God's chosen you to show you something else. That's another way of looking at it.
Yes,
But
yes.
that's like another path, right? So there's sort of both of them are both paths to surrender in a way, like surrender to God loving you or God wanting to show you something. But so the whole thing about like true.
Well, is it surrender or is it empowerment? Because it's not a surrender in like do whatever you want to me. It's more of a a certain need has been fulfilled, and now I am free to try and explore the next, something different.
I don't see why surrender and empowerment are mutually exclusive.
Okay.
Because I mean, if you surrender to something that is fundamentally true, you're then empowered by it.
Okay.
In as much that it's fundamentally true and therefore empowering you.
Okay, so you're taking surrender and saying, yeah, surrender in of itself can be an empowering experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when it's to the real God.
Sorry?
Especially when it's to the real God.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But the thing about a lot of that stuff is it's interesting because we haven't really talked a lot about a lot of those telemic presumptions and what you have done with them, what I've done with them. I basically threw them all out to see what would happen.
Yeah, I really wasn't awake during those lessons.
Right. Well, you've remembered more than me, guy. So what does that say?
They're powerful. It's seeped into my subconscious,
No, I mean, what does it say? I mean, you've remembered it more than me. Like, to me, when I hear that sort of stuff, I hear the bantering of the crazy cult.
Yes.
I hear that. It feels like some B-grade Catholic creeping on about, saying yay, yay, Pope.
Yeah.
I don't hear anything profound anymore.
Yeah, fair enough.
I just like, when they say love is a law, it's like, well, who doesn't praise love? And there's millions of types of love.
Yes, of
And,
course.
and it's a personal anyway, that's the whole
But
thing.
you got to, I mean, my experience of Thelema wasn't, necessarily, I think, the OTOA or whatever. It was really just, what we had happening in Melbourne back in the 90s, which was this wonderful performance art group that had an interesting subtext, you know what I mean? And yeah, that's what spoke to me and was profound. And, coming from a very different background, it was, again, this freedom to play with ideas, to do things interesting, to say life doesn't have to be, just this very, very limited concept, what was packaged before, which was great. I mean, what did I do with it? I, started doing a lot more traveling, and both, externally and internally, and it was very good. But it's funny looking back and going, hey, look where we've ended up.
Well, we just end up like normal people.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. That you're doing all this really interesting stuff when you're younger, and then you end up just getting old.
Yeah.
And living with all the things that come with getting old.
Yeah.
Like normal people.
And then the question is, okay, do I then just accept that and, settle into growing old like everyone else, or, is the desire to, strike out, to, to give birth to vision and follow it? Is that something, am I just essentially returning back to, am I refusing to grow old? Is it a problem, or is it actually, no, let's do it again with more experience and see where it can go,
when I joined that group of people,
yeah.
I was reading the works, which seemed like really well considered.
Yeah.
I was meeting this group of people that were basically, wrecks. They were train wrecks.
Yes,
a whole lot of them.
yes.
They were, just, dying left, right, and centre, and all the rest of it. And so, when in Melbourne,